President Zelensky has met the US Vice President J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference to discuss an end to the war in Ukraine. Mr. Zelensky stressed there can't be any talks between him and Vladimir Putin until a plan has been agreed with the US and Europe. Speaking after the meeting, he said Ukraine was thankful for American support.
We have good conversation today. Our first meeting, not last, I'm sure, and really what we need to speak more, to work more, and to prepare the plan how to stop Putin and finish the war.
Meanwhile, the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary are being quoted in this morning's Daily Telegraph saying the EU and the UK must do more to share the burden of security in Europe. Let's speak to Andrew Levi, a former senior British diplomat who worked in Moscow. And I think I'm right in saying you were expelled from Moscow, weren't you?
I was. That was following the Litvinenko murder, which many people will remember, when Britain expelled a number of Russian officials from London and the Russians retaliated.
And you were the most senior person from the embassy to be expelled. Let's look very much in depth at this whole idea of the talks. What do you make of what is coming out of the security conference?
The comments by President Zelensky make total sense. He needs security guarantees, otherwise any talks about a peace deal are meaningless. Who is going to provide those security guarantees is the big question. The Americans are making very different noises now under Trump than they were under Biden. So it's very unclear what the Americans would be willing to contribute. And you mentioned Vice President Vance. He gave a speech at the Munich Security Conference yesterday attacking Europe for being, un-European, he said, not sticking up for European values. So although the Americans haven't indicated that they are going to pull out of NATO or fail to provide a nuclear umbrella for Europe, they're very worrying sounds coming out of these discussions at the moment.
And a while ago, you wrote a paper in which you said, in Europe, we rely for our safety on American power. America, if we are to believe what is coming out of the Trump administration, is backpedaling, it seems. And does that explain why the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary are perhaps now saying that the EU and the UK must do more to share the burden of security in Europe? Because America, it seems, doesn't want to get involved anymore.
In short, yes. Whether it's quite true to say America doesn't want to get involved anymore, the risk that the US might be unwilling to get involved seems to be higher. And in any case, even before Trump, the Americans have been saying, since Obama, since longer really, the Europeans must do more for their defence. European NATO must do more, must spend more. And I think if you were looking at it from an American perspective, you'd say, behind the scenes, being a bit impolite, you might say the Europeans have been free riding on the Americans. Now they need to catch up. That's, I think, fine. We absolutely need to catch up. We're talking about spending 2.5% of our gross domestic product on defence. That isn't enough. That's not going to be nearly enough. And that has big implications for our domestic budgets and major political implications domestically, not just in Britain, but in Germany, where there's a general election coming up, and these are very live issues. Yes, we need to spend more. The difficulty is if we spend more, it takes time to put in place the capacity. We need to catch up fast. The Americans, if they start withdrawing their guarantees for European security, which on the one hand are the nuclear umbrella, which they haven't talked about removing, that's a nuclear deterrent, and on the other hand, the ability to deploy very large numbers of troops very fast to any place where NATO might be attacked, that if they remove that or they produce doubt, we'll be left with a security vacuum in Europe that we haven't seen for 8 decades.
Andrew, thank you very much for your thoughts this morning. That's Andrew Levi there, former British diplomat who worked in Moscow and was expelled from Moscow by President Putin.